lunches which have arrived, and we're going to break into our policy subgroups.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Commissioner.
Hold on, Lou, just 1 second, if you could.
Okay.
Just 1 second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Brady, did you want to introduce me?
I'm actually going to turn this over to Carrie first, but I just want to make sure everybody was back. We're all good? Robert's not back yet. Lee. Okay, here comes Lee. All right. Okay, Carrie. Oh, Brady. All right, Brady. Hi, Brady.
Good morning, Jim. Fellow committee members, Caltrans and CH2M are approaching the last stages of the independent evaluation. Today we have Lou Newdorf here to provide a status update. Lou's been responsible for leading the technology evaluation and writing the technical report since the beginning of the independent evaluation process. As the lead technical writer, he brings 30 years of experience as a transportation systems and engineering consultant, including road charge experience as the project manager for the Oregon Road Usage Charge Pilot Program from 2011 to 2013. For most of his projects, he has been the lead writer, compiling reports for engineers, planners, policymakers, executives, and the general public.
Thank you much, Brady, and Commissioner. Thank you, Chairman, and all members. I'm the newbie here. I have not attended, mainly because I didn't really get involved other than seeing what I was going to have to write about, and now I'm writing about it. In fact, I'm pretty much done writing about it. As you well know, the pilot is done. We've collected all the data and the information, started submitting interim sections of the final report to Brady and Carrie back in April, had some meetings to discuss, so we knew we were going in the right direction. The draft final report was submitted May 8th. You'll see up there our target was May 22nd to submit the final report. Brady, Carrie, and us decided, look, this is very important. Let's not rush it. Let's give the appropriate time to review, talk about comments, and then incorporate those comments. So we're now looking at sometime May 30th or May 31st for the submission of the final report. I'm going to touch on just a few things here today. Focus groups, that was briefly mentioned at the last TAC meeting by Susan Martinovich. I'm also going to talk general, what were some of the high points and trends from the interviews, and I'll just have one slide just to give you an overview of the final report. Focus groups. Susan talked about this a little bit last meeting. They're completely qualitative information. What they do is they provide anecdotal information that helps support the more quantitative and also can help you explain some of the quantitative. I'm happy to say there were no disconnects between what the participants said in the focus groups and what the surveys and the data said. That's when you realize maybe you're having a problem. Going to go quickly through some of the key points of this. First of all, you had a very highly motivated group of participants. There seemed to be a great deal of civic mindedness, coupled with a lot of curiosity, particularly, I think, respect to what technology could do, and this desire to be at the start of something that may or may not be moving forward. But a lot of folks wanted to do it. Generally, the participants in the focus groups thought that road charging was a good idea, that it was a fair way to do this whole concept of the user pays principle. This matched what we heard from the surveys at the end of the pilot. There was some skepticism. Can you keep people from cheating? And so that goes back to the compliance and enforcement issue. People are very comfortable with technology and understanding what they had to choose, not so much the account manager. There was a lot of confusion, what is an account manager? Some folks thought, oh, is that like my personal banker? People chose technology, and it was the account manager came along with it, and only then did they realize, oh, if I'd chosen perhaps another account manager, I could have had more goodies and benefits in the other services. So and I think Matthew mentioned that there needs to be some of that. So that's just one of the lessons learned. And I think that's going to become even more important as we start marketing and they start marketing services of which road charging is more of a value added than the other way around. Privacy, no surprise here, privacy will continue to be an important issue in road charging. Most of the participants, given that it was a 9-month pilot And given that many of them were already technology savvy, I think the fact that over the entire participant population, 72% chose a location-based device shows that they had a certain comfort with technology and all the privacy issues that goes on with that. Again, though, looking long-term, they were still concerned how this would work in a mandated pilot. We mentioned a little bit about the other services. Again, the participants seemed to enjoy those. They didn't realize that a lot of them didn't fully comprehend what their choices were until after they had signed up, but they liked it. The driving scores, I think, fascinated a lot of people. They'd go and talk to their friends who were all signed up and said, what's your driving score? Here's my driving score. I don't think, generally, we didn't find that anybody actually changed their driving habits, but at least they were getting interested in it. So those are the highlights from the focus groups. As I said, there was no disconnect between what the focus group participants said and what the surveys and the data said. Like we did at the beginning of the pilot program, in the middle of it, we also conducted interviews with the project development team, the interagency working group, and the account managers themselves. Some of the key results from talking to the PDT and the interagency working group. This is not news to any of you. Messaging, education, outreach on why we need to change and how it works is going to be very important. Data privacy and implementation logistics are very important, as well as the concern with implementation costs and system inefficiencies. Basically, the same things have been said around this table, not only today, but I'm sure at other meetings. The account manager findings were quite interesting. One of our tasks was to get some data that might be used, cost data that might be used to start developing what this would cost in the future. Been very difficult. Keep hearing that it's proprietary. We have been able to, based on some discussions we had about a month ago, we went back to them and asked, well, okay, give us a range for a future system. And we are getting some pricing on that. The other type of pricing we're getting is what their standalone services without road charging cost, because in a way that can be considered as a baseline. So we're in the process of getting sure that they have no problems with this. Putting in the report, that will be in the report, and that gives somewhat of a baseline. If a company is charging, say, $10 per month per subscription for these other services, we can start thinking about what would be the value of the additional cost for road charging, things like that. In discussions with all the vendors, both as part of this project and other conferences and the like, there's a general consensus that when you start talking of millions of vehicles per account manager, then you're talking real economies of scale. They say it might even be possible to get their costs down to what the administrative costs of the gas tax. That is the account manager saying that they have a vested interest, but there are economies of scale to be had. And finally, and I think this is a potential dichotomy as you move forward, Matthew was talking about having a style guide and all that, and I'm not disagreeing, but in a free enterprise capitalistic society, I think the account managers want a little bit more freedom to market and market their services. So that finding that balance between the needs, your needs, and their needs as a private enterprise, something will have to be worked out in the future. Commercial trucking questionnaire, there were 7 fleets, I believe. I think we got responses back from 5, although I think one of those doesn't count because they said no response on each question. So, but based on what we heard, again, they were very satisfied. And I think perhaps the telling point of that, as Matthew mentioned, 2 of them are opting in to continue the E-road services at their own cost. Personal opinion here, I think that's the future of road charging, that other people are going to want these other services, and road charging becomes the value added to these other services.
That's why I like to call it a Fitbit for your car.
I like that. Just like your $5 on pump number 10, Jim, I'm going to be stealing that. But
Please
don't
do.
forget what Picasso said, good artists borrow, great artists steal. So I think that's the key thing. They had many of the same concerns, Eric, that I'm sure you're hearing from your entire membership. Don't make this on top of the existing fuel tax. Make it fair. cost neutral, and the like. So no surprise there. But it's always good to know that this has, that what we're hearing matches what other people are hearing as well. And finally, as I said, we have the final report in draft form. It has an executive summary. I'm working with Norma and Brady. It's a 13-page executive summary, and I'm not sure what we can cut out of it. I'm going to be working on that.
You know me, I keep saying as much information, the more we can benefit from as possible, but
Well, this is an executive summary. The full report is about 120 pages.
believe it.
So,
Oh, is that all? I'm surprised, Lou.
Just a quick comment, in all those pages you're talking about, I hope it's made clear right up front what the pilot was attempting to do and what the pilot was not. And that's obvious, I suppose, I'm sure it's in there. But I think that's very important, that some people may walk away thinking that either the pilot did more than it did or didn't cover certain things.
That is always good. There's the forest and the trees problem, and I am often guilty of that. That should be in Section 1. I can't remember if it is, because Section 1, as you can see up there, is all about the background, SB 1077, the purpose of the pilot program. I'll make sure that it wasn't trying to be, as Douglas Adams said, the answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything. That it had its focus, and we do talk about what the goals were, and I'll make sure of that. And particularly, it's probably worth mentioning that compliance and enforcement was specifically not included. We talk about that in Section 2, which talks about how we collected the data, what we did with the data, and then it goes through all the goal areas in order, each of the criterion, the data and the information that was used, and then it has results with graphics, bar charts, to the greatest extent possible. We even have, Matthew was talking about the comparison of EPA versus estimated mileage. We have a wonderful scatter diagram of that, and it shows some outliers of hybrids that are MPGE, which is the same as necessarily of MPG. So, and we talk about that. And then we have conclusions. Conclusions really is another form of executive summary, but whereas the executive summary gave a summary of the goals and criteria as set by TAC, the conclusion does the same sort of summary, but it goes through the various items that are specifically identified in SB 1077. And I think I did it in time.
Wow, you did, you were actually under time by 1 minute, so thank you, Lou. Commissioner Keough.
Thank you, Jim. On slide 13, your last point is no money exchanged or enforcement in the pilot was a drawback. Could you just expand on that a little bit?
Well, that came from the project delivery team, and I think they were saying the results that we get, because there was no real money involved, I think what they're saying is you might have to take the results with a certain grain of salt. The fact that there was no money involved and it wasn't mandated, that could impact the results and the compliance, and there was nothing to do with compliance either. I mean, you didn't have to, and that, by the way, that is one thing Matthew and I have talked about, and Brady and Carrie will have to work on that. What Matthew calls compliance is a little bit different than what I'm calling compliance in our final report. So we'll have to go to like what the Senate and the House do. We have to have a reconciliation committee or something. But that's what that meant. It was a drawback because that is certainly going to, not horribly, I don't think it skewers the results, but it has to be kept in mind.
Supervisor.
So I want to get back to your comment about the account managers were saying that they might be able to get the admin costs down to close to where we have the admin costs for the gas tax.
Yes.
Which is about 1%, I think, for the gas tax. So that would be incredible. But when you're taking into account, they have to call people, your time permit's expired, we need new credit card updates, you got to get your information into us so we can bill you. I just think the follow-up with the road charge program from an admin perspective has got to be substantially higher.
Well, that came from folks like Azuga and IMS, who are doing more of the automated, not the manual method. So let me,
Okay.
that's a very good point. These are folks who are doing an automated method.
Yeah.
Also, this is part of their business model, and this is where they are going to be marketing and selling these in-vehicle services, whether it's through in-vehicle telematics, through the plug-in devices. One thing that has not been mentioned that needs to be addressed, and I think you're including it in your next project, is where does connected vehicle and the V2I infrastructure come into all of this as well? So that's a very valid point. These were account managers that are into the automated plug-in in-vehicle telematics.
Not about the whole program
Yeah,
in its
yeah, so
entirety.
that's a very
Okay.
valid point.
Okay.
Don't get too excited yet. Yes, that's,
I was getting excited. Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah, well, I think that as you look eventually in the future, I mean, you can see Starbucks saying, hey, we'll pay you 5 miles to come buy coffee at our particular location, or, you know, come to this location and we'll pay for your miles each way. And we've seen that with Uber has experimented with various shopping centers where they've incentivized people to come to the movies and take Uber, and they'll pay for it each way. And I know here in San Diego that happened up at a shopping center in the Del Mar, northern San Diego County area, and it was oversubscribed in the first couple of weeks. People were very attuned to that type of thing, and I think you can ultimately see that in this onboard telematics.
well, I think it goes back to this whole dichotomy and balance you're going to have to find between certain restrictions, rules and requirements on account managers vis-à-vis letting them go with free enterprise and capitalism. There's a balance there somewhere, I'm not sure where.
Exactly. 2 things. I'd like to first recognize Caltrans District 11 Director Lori Berman and a participant in the Road Charge pilot. Lori, thank you for letting us use your beautiful facilities as you have over the last couple of years that the Road Charge has been here, and thanks for being part of the pilot. Did you enjoy being in the pilot? Did you?
I found it really easy. I did the, where I just took a picture.
Oh, we got to put you on a mic. Sorry, I put her on the spot here. I shouldn't have done that, but
Thank you. I found it really easy, and I've talked to a lot of people about it, and the folks that, as I go around talking to people, most people found it very easy to use and very informative. I did the one where I just take a picture, which is what I do with my insurance company also. They send me a note, I take a picture of my odometer, and then I forget about it for a month. So great work, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of what this yields. Thank you.
thank you very much, Lori. Also, let me turn to CTC Executive Director Susan Branson to give you a little perspective on Senate Bill 1, which wasn't necessarily on our agenda, but as we move into tab 10, or section 10 on the agenda, let me just kind of give you a laydown. We're going to be now shifting to really some of the most important part of the TAC for, frankly, the rest of our existence as part of Senate Bill 1077. I will share with you up front, if I had my way, we will, through legislation, one way or another over the next year, because the TAC technically is in existence till the end of 2018. But we would like to be able to figure out a way to where we can continue to utilize all of you and your body of knowledge that you've gained since we started at the beginning of 2015 as we pursue these next steps, whatever they may be. Are they going to be telematics? Is it going to be some form of pay at the pump model? Because I'll never forget when many of you came in, some of you didn't know anything on transportation. You've now become experts on a lot of this stuff, and you're really folks that know this better. The legislature is going to depend on you, the governor's offices, and frankly others as we move forward. So what we're going to do today as we now move into this item is really talk about some of the policy ideas. We've got it set to where we're going to break you up into individual groups, and in doing that, we've got privacy and data security. That's going to be Lee is heading that up. We're going to have those of you in that stay here in the room. Social equity and pricing, Pam O'Connor. There's a room right outside DOT, room 127, right outside. And then administration and enforcement, Professor Wax is going to head that up in room 128. Before we go to those work groups, there's box lunches already delivered here. Just grab a box lunch and take it with you. But kind of just to seed some of the conversation as we go into these groups is really some of what we've just heard from the lessons learned as well as the overview from the independent evaluator. And that is, what should be the next steps for California? Should we be sensitive, obviously, to the costs? Will the various models we've studied, would they even work in the future? Or do we want to look at something a little bit differently, getting to Eric and you all repeating my often stated comment, it's got to be as easy as putting $5 on number 10 to where it's behind the scenes to the consumer. Are we going to utilize telematics? Should the consumer be able to opt in location or not? Then they might be able to opt into value-added services. These are the kind of things we need to think about. What about transitioning the fleet? You've older vehicles that don't have the technology, but they have the OBD2 port that maybe we can utilize that for now. But what about as we move, as Lou is alluding to, a shift to autonomous vehicles? Those vehicles will be owned by somebody, probably GM, probably the very auto manufacturers themselves that have realized that they're not going to be selling as many cars anymore, that they're going to probably end up becoming more of a model like an Uber or a Lyft. And by them owning those vehicles, that means that they own that data, and they're the ones that are going to pay for it as you use your smartphone or what have you to go from place to place. So should we mandate that all autonomous vehicles have a different model of paying for using the infrastructure through a road charge? These are the policy considerations that this TAC needs to talk about today and as we go into the future that will have an influence on what the report is that the Transportation Agency is required under statute to write, as well as the Transportation Commission. Chris Kehoe and I, we will get this at the commission, and we as a commission have to then take what you've done and then turn that into a report that's due to the legislature by December of this year, which in reality, I think when Curtis gets back next week, he's going to be starting on that commission report and start working on, I know you already have, but start working on some of the things. But hearing from you all today in these subgroups, and then we're going to come back and report out on some of the things that you've talked about high level. This is going to be some of the most important stuff that we've done with this technical advisory committee to date, because now it's up to us to be able to figure out what are the next steps. How is this going to be done? Is it going to be through legislation? Is it going to be done like CARB did with the OBD2 port? The auto manufacturers had no choice. They had to do it. They weren't given a choice. The legislature, if this had to go through the legislature, and Chris could tell you this, it would have never been voted in. But the fact that CARB did it, it happened. And we now have data that we just would not have otherwise had. So these are things we need to think about as we move forward. So before we break into groups, I want to see if anybody around the room has any questions or comments as we lead into that. And then Curtis, I'm going to turn to you to tell us who's in what group. Anybody questions, comments?
A question just on,
Mayor?
I'm not exactly aware how expensive this pilot was, and if anyone could quantify that, and if anyone's thought about like taking a pilot and maybe making it a bigger group of people or something along those lines, and if there's expenses associated with that.
Sure. I'll turn to Norman in a moment, but just to give you an overview, we're the largest pilot that's ever been done with 5,000 participating vehicles. Oregon's got a program right now that I think they're around 2,000 in an ongoing effort. Is it 1,000 still? It's still that. But then you look at California with almost 40 million people compared to Oregon with barely 3 million. You've got quite a difference. So the cost, I'll let Norma address that as part of what the legislation included in Senate Bill 1077.
Excuse me. We received an augmentation to our budget of about $9 million over the last few years, and that included staff time. We were able to hire a few folks in to focus on this pilot at Caltrans. It included our vendor costs and the cost of the devices for our account managers and folks. A lot of outreach. We're probably not going to expend the full amount. We're very close. We don't have the authorization to go beyond, at this point, we had SB 1077 that authorized a pilot. So we're going to report on that, and then we'll see where the legislature, what path the legislature decides.
So Executive Director Branson and I have made the rounds with key legislators that are interested in transportation and frankly, the legislative leadership. And I can tell you there is strong interest in moving forward with something. But we're still really close to something that you all are aware just happened, and that's called Senate Bill 1. There's some frayed nerves on both sides of that issue. And I think that's an important sensitivity as well. So with that, let me turn it over to Susan real quick to kind of give you a little update on SB 1, and then we'll go back to Curtis to break us into groups.
Okay, and I know that we have some TAC members that are very familiar with Senate Bill 1, but Senate Bill 1 was an urgency measure that really was, Senator Bell, our TAC member, was authored this bill, it was working closely with Assemblymember Frazier. And the Speaker, the Pro Tem, and the Governor really recognized the sense of urgency that we have to immediately take care of our local streets and roads and our highway system, our infrastructure, to protect it, recognizing that, the work of this committee and of Caltrans, we need a long-term solution ultimately, but it's going to take years, and to allow the system to just deteriorate was not an option. And so as a result, the legislature last month and the governor signed SB 1, and that bill, I don't have notes here, but that bill is providing approximately $5.2 billion a year through a series of different programs. It essentially raised the excise tax on gasoline, excise tax on diesel. It provides for a transportation improvement fee based on, the vehicle registration value of the vehicles. There's a fee ultimately that will be imposed on electric vehicles. And so there's a variety of different revenue mechanisms in the bill. And within the bill, it will go towards a variety of different programs. It has a majority, the bill itself is called the Road Repair and Accountability Act. And so it's really a fix-it-first bill for the majority of the funds goes to preserving, rehabilitating, and maintaining the highway system and local streets and roads. There is funding dedicated to transit. There's funding dedicated to freight. There's funding dedicated to congested corridors, multimodal improvements. There's funding dedicated to the self-help counties for road maintenance, rehabilitation, and other improvements. There's funding in the bill for research. There's funding for planning for the MPOs, Sustainable Community Strategy Planning, and there's other elements to the bill. But this was a very heavy lift. And, one thing I would mention for Commissioner Medaffer and Commissioner Kehoe, just to let you all know, they have the key role in a majority of the funding that was provided in this bill for determining how to roll it out to projects in the state. And it's a tremendous role, a tremendous responsibility of the commission. The bill is called the Road Repair and Accountability Act. Accountability is a key component of this bill, that the money is not only put to work to the quickly and to the most important projects providing the greatest overall benefit to Californians, but that those receiving the funding deliver on the promises that they made, and that they're accountable, and that the work that's done and the money that's spent, that there's reporting out to the public. So that's a key role of the commission, not only in programming a majority of the funding to projects, but holding those, accountability for how the money's spent. But that's a very high-level overview. What I would say, and Commissioner Medaffer, Chair Medaffer, we did have a series of meetings, and Curtis attended a lot of those as well. And, this was a really difficult vote for the legislators. And it was a very, the governor just, the leadership we have in the state is remarkable, is from my opinion perspective. But there are a lot of folks that really stepped out and did this on behalf of the citizens of California in the future. And this committee and at the commission, we need to be sensitive to that, knowing that we need a long-term solution. The excise tax on gasoline, we all know, is not sustainable. But as we move forward on a report, as staff to the commission, I do know that we need to be sensitive of that in how we portray what we write. And we do all know that it's going to take some steps to get to where we need to be over the next decade. The governor, the leadership has really phrased this as, they talk a lot about a 10-year approach. The taxes that were raised, the fees are not limited to the next decade. They're continual. But we do know we need a long-term solution. So really what this provides is a short and medium-term solution to our needs to avoid future exponential costs. So it's just, our leadership's amazing, but we do need what we're doing here and to continue on. So with our road charge strategy. So that's my summary.
Thank you very much. Any questions on SB 1? All right, hearing none, let's go to Curtis to break us into groups.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do want to highlight there are 4 handouts from public comments that are also with your materials. 2 of them are from your fellow TAC members, Nidhi Kalra and Richard Marcantonio. You may want to take those with you as well. Make sure you take your tab 10 items because there are a couple slides in those materials as far as some starting point questions to discuss, and the leaders of your various work groups will help direct that conversation. In 10A for privacy and data security, Lee Tien will be facilitating that with Terry Benzel. Nidhi is not here, and Chair Madaffer. Those will remain here in this room. 10B for social equity and pricing, Ms. O'Connor has agreed to facilitate that with Lauren Kay, who's not able to attend. Mark Antonio has submitted his comments in writing, and Mr. Poitras. And that is in 127, which is out the door slightly to the right. And 10C for administration and enforcement, Professor Wax has agreed to facilitate that with Supervisor Bartlett, Mr. Finnegan, and Eric Sawyer, and that'll be in 128, which is out the door and slightly to your left. Please grab some lunches on the way, and we'll have staff there also to take notes and bring you guys a summary back so that you can talk about what came out.
Oh, yeah, let's review what time. Right now, it's, we'll call it, it's 11:35 now. What did we budget for this, an hour? An hour. So let's say by 12:30, we're back in the room.